Welcome everyone to Zoom into Books this afternoon. We have a very interesting author for you today. His name is Bill Dutcher, and he is a risk-taking businessman and loves basketball, business, and writing. He was a career journalist, a Navy veteran, and founded his own natural gas consulting company, among other businesses. Now he is the author of a new book that we are going to be discussing. The title is How Did I Do That? And as you are watching, we want to welcome you to join us today on Facebook. If you have any comments or questions for the author, please type them in the comments section on Facebook and we'll make sure you get your answers. So Bill, I want to welcome you to Zoom into Books today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's very exciting to have you with us. And I think I'd like for you to tell the viewers a little bit about your career. And why did you choose the cover of the book? I mean, what is the picture on the cover of the book? How did I do that? I know that's an interesting story too. So,
well, yes, the picture on the cover is actually my second grade picture. It has a little bit of a look out world, here I come aspect to it, I believe. By coincidence, it's not really my first autobiography. My first one was entitled Look Out World, Here I Come. But it was written in the third grade. So it shows how I really always wanted to be a writer, and I ended up with writing always being a big part of my career, even though it has taken on different directions. So I decided to write my current autobiography, How Did I Do That? And the subtitle is important too. It's a life of risk and reward. And there's a Wordsworth quote that is famous that says, "The child is the father of the man." And I think my book confirms that, because the early part of the book goes clear back to my boyhood in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and continues right up until the time I retired as the chairman of my own oil and gas producing company. It was called Anadarko Minerals. And one of the main goals of my book is to show what a balanced life looks like. You see all the time, it's a whole Hallmark channel devoted to life balance and life work issues. So in my case, I decided that, and some of the advice that I give is to don't have a career. Have your work, but don't let the work crowd out your time for your family, time for fun, time for your health. And actually the best way to, or possibly the best opportunities for doing that, is to be self-employed. But if you're not, you still need to try to keep that balance.
That's true. And that's very good advice. I saw something not too long ago that said, don't let the career get in the way of your life. So you need to be able to do that balance, which it looks like you have done quite well. I know that you have a love of basketball. Um, you've done quite a few interesting things. Um, let's start with your college career and what you decided your career should be in the beginning. What was that?
Well, I majored in professional writing at the University of Oklahoma, and my early career included being a newspaper reporter, but actually before that, I was in the Navy for 4 years as a public affairs officer. And in that role, I was managing the base newspaper and the base radio station at a large naval base in the Philippines called Subic Bay. And then I went back to the Pentagon for my second 2 years in the Navy, working on the Navy news desk. At the time, we were the go-between between the national press and the Navy's operations in Vietnam. And so when I got out of the Navy, I had a very meteoric career as a newspaper reporter, but I was only making about a third of what I had made as a Navy lieutenant. And we had a new baby, our first daughter, Ann. And so I finally just had to quit to try to make some more money in public relations, which is what I did. And that led to a job back in my hometown of Barnesville as a speechwriter for Phillips Petroleum Company. And I enjoyed that job for 4 years. There was one speech that I was particularly proud of. I had written in August of 1973 a speech for the chairman of Phillips to give at a national convention of regulators of utilities. And in the speech that I ghostwrote, he predicted that the Arab nations might impose an oil embargo on the United States. And 4 months later, they actually did that, which triggered the energy crisis of the 1970s. And on my speechwriting career, I kind of felt like it was very enjoyable, but I didn't seem like it was leading anywhere. What convinced me to leave Phillips was I was on the plane coming back, the company jet with the chairman, Bill Martin, and the president, Bill Dowse, and some other Phillips executives. And they were the top bananas, and I was just a ghostwriter in the sky. And so the president of the company, Bill Dowse, said, yeah, I remember little Bill here. I was playing bridge at his folks' house because he used to be my dad's boss. And so I was playing bridge, and he came running out of the bedroom, and he was about 2 feet tall, and he didn't have a stitch of clothes on. And I immediately felt like that wasn't the image that I wanted to have with the top executives at Phillips. One of them chimed in, well, didn't he used to be my paper boy? And another one added, didn't you used to date my daughter? And so I just kind of felt like that maybe I had peaked out at Phillips. And so I ended up taking another job with an independent producer in Oklahoma City. And in that job, I had a very simple job description, which was get money and sell gas. The get money part was dealing with banks to finance our drilling, and the selling gas was doing the gas marketing contracts.
You've nearly been everywhere and done everything, actually. And to live through that crisis through the 70s, I remember that. Absolutely. I know that throughout, one of the key themes throughout your book is your love of basketball. And when you are speaking to young people, well, tell you what, let's back up just 1 second. Let's show some photographs that you have sent to us, because you have some basketball pictures in here, and I'll let you tell that story when we get to it.
Okay.
For those of you who are just joining us, we have Bill Dutcher with us today on Zoom Into Books. He is the author of the book, How Did I Do That? A Life of Risk and Reward. The book's available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. So now, Bill, we see a picture up here. So when you're speaking to young people, do you recommend sports and athletics based on your lifetime experiences with basketball?
Yes, I certainly would. It's been a driving force in my life, and from the time I was maybe 5 years old until I played until I was 74. I had this rather unique over 60 basketball career, played out in fantasy camps around the country. And these are camps where they were for men over 35. And so at 60 and up, I was well qualified. But they were sponsored by people like Michael Jordan and Dwayne Wade and the University of Kansas and at Duke University. And I made kind of a second career out of this fantasy camp basketball that lasted between the ages of 60 and 74. The photos here is taken when I was playing for the Bartlesville Wildcats, which was our hometown team in Bartlesville. And from there, I went on and played or walked on at the University of Oklahoma, and was there for a couple of years trying to make the team, and finally walked off as a sophomore. But the picture on the left, I was able to be included in an alumni basketball game. And in this particular picture, I'm trying to block the shot of Brent Price, who was an NBA star and a big star in Oklahoma, at the University of Oklahoma. After dodging around, the player behind me is a young man named Longer, and he was like 7'1". So I had to fight around him to try to guard Brent Price in the alumni game.
That's great. Great stories. I heard you talk about Michael Jordan. Did you ever get to play with Michael Jordan?
Yes, that was really one of the highlights of my life. Actually, I had a game of one-on-one against Michael Jordan at his fantasy camp in Las Vegas. And I was 60 at the time. He was 40. He had just finished his NBA career and was playing the campers one-on-one. So I lined up. When he saw me, he looked at me kind of funny and said, you just want something to tell your employees about. He didn't think I was much of a challenge. And actually, my thought was it was a photo op, because my daughter Emily was there, and she's a terrific photographer, and I know she might get some good shots of me playing against Michael Jordan. So he said, well, I'll give you the first shot. And I said, okay. And I was too scared to look at him, but I looked off and went straight up and shot a 3-point shot that swished the net. And he seemed kind of surprised and said, well, I'm going to guard you this time. And so
That's great.
I drove, and I should say we were only playing the 2 baskets. It was make it, take it, because there were, a lot of campers waiting, lined up wanting to play them as well. So I drove to the right elbow, to the on the side where the free throw line ends, and jumped backwards, shot a fadeaway that went up, in, around, and out. And so then it was his turn, and he made 2 quick 3-pointers, and I was toast. But it was a good experience.
And a great story for the ages, for sure.
And then one other Michael Jordan story that I actually like better. I was playing on his team, and it was a game that was being filmed by Ed Bradley for a 60-minute special that they were doing on him. And so in this game, he passed me the ball, and I faked a pass back to him, then drove along the baseline. And even though I was 60, I was getting up like I was in high school here, in this photo on the right, if it's still up. But at any rate, I found myself looking at the rim, and I hadn't seen the rim since college. And so it was just an adrenaline explosion based on, being with Michael Jordan on 60 Minutes. If you can't get excited by that, you may not have a pulse.
That's right.
So I made that basket, and so the next go around, he threw it to me and said, "Okay, hit the winner." So I fired it up. It actually missed, but he came in and dunked the rebound, and so our team won anyway. So those are my 2 Michael Jordan stories.
How exciting.
That inspired the book. Actually, my book started out as a basketball book, and it was going to be called Hoop Dreams Die Hard, the story of my over 60 basketball career. But then a friend of mine was interested in the business side of my life and how I had started with a journalism degree and a $500 investment, and ended up owning a independent oil and gas producing company called Anadarko Minerals, which is still entirely family owned and is a multi-million-dollar enterprise.
That's great. You're very inspirational for all ages. To start a basketball career at age 60 is very unusual, Bill, for sure.
Yes.
Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. Well, this is a continuation from a couple of the camps. The one on the left is I'm trying to escape from Dwayne Wade, who is only 6'4", but he has like a 7-foot wingspan. And so he seems to be blocking the entire court. It looks like I was running into a wall. And so the only thing I could do to get away from him was dribble behind my back and go around to the left. And but Dwayne Wade's a tremendously nice guy, and I went to 4 of his camps while he was holding them in Miami.
That's great.
Then the photo on the right is that same day that I had been on Michael Jordan's team. There was also another game where he was on the opposing team, and he appears to be holding me in the lane like he's afraid I'm going to get away from him or something. But I like that picture just because I've got Michael Jordan hand-checking me.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the next. There we go.
Well, this some family photos. The one on the left is I'm with my wife Terry and my little brother Phil. We're in Wiesbaden, Germany, where Phil was in the Air Force. Terry and I were en route from the Philippines back to the United States, and since we'd already been to Hawaii a few times, we decided, and it's halfway around the world, we decided to come back via Europe and be able to visit my little brother in Wiesbaden.
That's great.
And then the picture on the right is I'm escorting my younger daughter Emily in her backyard wedding.
That's great.
And I can't quite tell what the picture in the middle is. There's something covering it up, but
yeah, we'll move on to the next slide.
okay. So yeah, these photos are fun. The one on the left was Terry and I were dating. She was a Chi Omega and they have an annual ski party. And so Terry came up with this sweater, which is a sweater for two. And this is us at that party. The only thing I can say about that is at least you can keep up with your date and know where she is at all times.
It's true.
And the picture on the right is a kind of a Leave It to Beaver photo of in the 50s of my family in Barnesville. My dad in the foreground was a scientist and chemist at the Phillips Research and Development. And he actually got a deferment from World War II because they were working on developing synthetic rubber. The Japanese had taken over a lot of the rubber plantations in Asia. And so my dad had a critical occupation deferment to work on that rubber alternative. Then also in the pictures, my mom, Louise, who in the book I describe as a indifferent housewife, but a dedicated club woman. In Barnesville in the 50s, it was considered a failure on the part of the man if his wife had to work, quote, outside the home. So all my friends, their mothers, were home, and the mothers wanting to be active had, half a dozen clubs that they could go to, and then finally, my younger brother Phil, I guess he was in grade school then. I was in junior high, and my older brother Dale in the back was in high school. Dale went on and served in the Marine Corps, and Phil, as said earlier, was in the Air Force. So between the three of us, we covered all the armed forces.
Oh, that's great.
The picture on the left is during our trip home from the Philippines. We're actually in Switzerland on a train. So Terry's has kind of a pensive look, and so I call it a pregnant pause because she was pregnant at the time with our daughter Ann.
It's a beautiful picture. Yeah.
And then the picture on the right is what I call tough duty in the Philippines. We're on the beach there at Subic Bay, and Terry's giving me a push in the swing.
Right. All right. Oh, got some more basketball.
Well, some more basketball. The this picture Emily took, it's of the shot that I made against Michael Jordan. You can barely see the ball in the upper left-hand corner. But that kind of shows the setup for the fantasy camps. They were in a huge ballroom in one of the Las Vegas hotels, the Mirage. And there were 6 courts all in the same room. And about 100 different campers and about 20 famous coaches. The picture on the right, I'm giving some advice to former Duke coach and U.S. Olympic coach Mike Krzyzewski, who was my coach at 2 of the Jordan camps. And in this picture, I joked that I'm giving him advice, but I don't think he really needed it from me.
That's great. All right. Well, that really brings your book alive to see those pictures and hear those stories. I know that you do speaking. You speak to groups and schools. Is that right?
Well, not recently, no. Something I had done in the past, but I've been pretty much working from home, especially since I semi-retired in 2019. My wife has some health issues that keeps me close to home and prevents me from really getting out much. But that gave me time to write a book, so it wasn't all bad.
Well, and this is not your first book either, is it?
No, actually, I published a book called Fictoids in 2004. And a fictoid I made up is a fictional factoid. It was at a time when CNN used to stream these little facts across the bottom of the screen. And I just thought, well, what if you could just make those up? Wouldn't that be fun? And so I spent maybe a couple of years jotting down ideas for fictoids on a napkin or an envelope or something. And I got a whole shoebox full of potential fictoids and decided to put them together in a book form. And they were kind of off the wall, like this one's appropriate or inappropriate maybe now. But did you know that Henry IX couldn't even get a date?
No.
So
No.
if you know that Henry VIII beheaded his wives, then you would get that.
Right.
There are cultural references in the fictoids that if you don't get the cultural reference, there's no joke. But I was explaining this to this producer for Regis and Kelly at an event where authors were able to pitch their books. And I told her that it was kind of intellectual humor, that you had to get the cultural reference to get the joke. And she said, "Oh, we wouldn't want to do anything that would make our viewers think," which I was kind of surprised by.
That surprises me too.
But I had the best thing about fictoids was that I had it illustrated by Jack Ziegler, who at the time was a famous cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine. And he did about 15 cartoons for the book. And the cartoons are actually better than, the part that I wrote, but I thought it made a good book.
That's great. How did you hook up with the illustrator?
Well, I saw that the New Yorker magazine advertised something they called the Cartoon Bank. And so my daughter Emily and I flew to New York and met with the one of the top editors, and he gave us a tour of the magazine, and we discussed different cartoonists, most of whom are independent, but have a ongoing relationship with the New Yorker. And so he suggested 2 or 3, and we decided that Jack Ziegler would be the best one for what we were looking for. And so I sent him 2 dozen fictoids, and he picked a dozen or so that he wanted to illustrate, and that just worked out really well.
It's always interesting how people do get connected. We've had a few more people join us on Facebook. If you have just joined us, we're talking today with Bill Dutcher. He is the author of 2 books. The one we're talking about today is How Did I Do That? A Life of Risk and Reward. And I have posted links to Bill's website and to his books in the Facebook comments. Bill, you are somebody who has absolutely lived life to the fullest. And now, as you're looking back on your very successful life, if you could pick 2 top moments, what are the first 2 that come to your mind? Tell us about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, I looking back, I would say, in terms of just good fortune, I happened to sit down in a criminology class at OU next to this pretty blonde, and managed to strike out a conversation, and that led to a coke date, and one thing led to another, and so we recently celebrated our 57th wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
So that the time that I met
Congratulations.
Terry probably has to be number
That's
one.
terrific. Yeah.
And I can't think of number 2
Well, since
right
you're,
off the top of my head, but
well, let me
there's
ask
been
you
a
that.
lot, a lot of ups and downs. I describe my life in the book as a balancing act on a roller coaster, because the roller coaster aspect is provided by the oil and gas industry and the booms and the busts. And the boom times can be great, and you feel like you're just on top of the world, and the price can fall through the floor, and that things are crashing, and everyone's declaring bankruptcy. And like at one time I had to explain to my girls why the men were carrying off our new furniture, that we had bought but hadn't paid for yet. And so you kind of have to, in fact, that was the aspect that got my friend to convince me to go from just a basketball book to include the business side of my life. And the oil and gas industry is not for the faint-hearted. It's, in fact, I was just noticing, as you know, prices have been on a nice, from my standpoint, upswing here recently. And I was just saying, gee, if I'd have waited another 2 years, I could have had a happier ending to my book. But that's just the nature of the business, and so.
And there's few things more volatile, sorry for the pun, than
Yeah.
the oil and gas business. Now with the price per barrel coming over, I mean, things are really way up and down for anybody involved in this business so far. I know you've done a ton of traveling, and you were also in the Navies. Of all the places you've been, where would you what's your first choice to go back and visit?
Hmm. Well, I would love to go back to the Philippines to see how much it has changed. It was still a pretty low income, rural economy. I loved part of my job in the Philippines was community relations, and I did my part of it with taking a Navy basketball team and playing the local teams from all these little barrios and communities, mostly on the main island of Luzon. But they would all have a team, and often we would play them in association with some type of a festival that they were having. And so they would crown a queen of the rice harvest or whatever, the festival was. And then our team would play the Filipino teams. And they were very fast, good players. And I thought it was interesting that both the temperatures and the scores in our games were all over 100.
Yeah. Well, we do have a few questions that have come in and covered some of these in the early part of this interview. What was your approach to building your own business? And I mean, you were a journalist, and I know you transitioned from that into business. What was the driving force for that?
Well, I saw an opportunity to start a natural gas consulting business. So one of my jobs at the earlier time I was talking about, where I'd also, been a lobbyist. One of my jobs was to sell gas, which developed some experience and expertise in the natural gas markets. And so
since you
it was a very, talk about pivotal moments in my life. I gathered my family together in 1987 in our kitchen and told them that I was going to leave my paying job as a natural gas consultant and start my own natural gas consulting company. And at this point, they had all been through at least one, if not more, boom and bust, so they knew what the risks were, but they encouraged me to go ahead and do that. And so I started as a natural gas consultant, and then at one point we started buying oil and gas properties for clients. But after about a year and a half of that, the clients were making so much money from what we were able to do that we thought, well, maybe we should be doing this for ourselves instead of for clients. And so we started buying small interest in wells, either royalty interests or what's called a non-operated working interest, where you own a piece of the well, but you're not doing the actual operations. And we just did it brick at a time. No deal was too small for us, at first. Just whatever we were able to buy, and we would attend auctions and bid on deals that were syndicated. But most of it was just piecing it together, as I said, brick at a time. And
so tell us about one of your favorite oil and gas deals.
Probably my favorite was during the we bought some leases in Texas in an area called the Eagleford, and we knew that it was a developing era. It was very early in the shale gas developments, and we were able to buy 5,000 acres, an oil and gas lease, in one deal, because the ranches in Southwest Texas are so huge that it wasn't unusual for someone to have 5,000 acres, and it only took one lease to do it. In Oklahoma, it would have taken 20 or 30 different rural or mineral owners to be able to put together that many acres. And we bought it with the knowledge that this Oklahoma City company called Chesapeake wasn't buying in that area yet, but we expected that they would be eventually, because they had a public company with a very voracious appetite and very risk-taking CEO. And so based on that, we paid $8 million for the leases, and we went on what we called a two-track approach. We were either going to drill the wells ourselves or wait and see what happened to the lease prices. And as the area heated up, it became clear to us that it was getting overheated, and so we went ahead and sold the leases to Chesapeake Energy for $44 million. And so we had made like a $30 million gain in 9 months. And that
would be my favorite deal too. Yes, it would.
Well, that kind of gave us the wherewithal to continue building our company and keep it private. So it's still a family company. My daughter Ann and her husband Ule Andresen form what I call our kitchen cabinet, because we literally meet in the kitchen to make decisions for the company. And then my younger daughter Emily and her husband Russ run what we call Dutcher Investment Properties, which is I believe in investing in real things, like oil wells and houses, as opposed to cryptocurrencies and NFTs, and so but at any rate, they run our real estate business. And probably the thing that I'm most proud of is that we have this eight-person family unit here in Norman, including our two granddaughters. And it's nice to have all 8 of us here working together in our oil and gas and then in our real estate businesses. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
That truly is amazing that you were able to maintain the business as a family-held business. That says a lot to you and your family. I think that's fantastic. We're just about out of time, Bill. I have one more question, and it is, why did you add an epilogue to your life story?
Well, in writing the main book itself, I took an approach as what I call like a newspaper reporter, just reporting on what happened. So there wasn't any attempt in the book itself to persuade anyone of anything or to advance any certain political or ideological agenda. But then I thought it might be worthwhile to add what I would call the lessons learned, because having gone through all of these experiences, what would I conclude about life based on these experiences? And that's what went into the epilogue. Uh, and so there were things, you know, like I mentioned before, don't have a career, have a life, of which your work is an important part, and things like that.
That's great advice. I think you're an inspiration to young people and people of all ages, really. Um, you've had, and we want to thank you for your service to your country too. You've um, been a huge inspiration to a lot of people. And I will urge everybody to pick up a copy of Bill Dutcher's book. It's available online on Amazon, wherever books are sold. It's available on his website. And this video will be available on the Zoom Into Books YouTube channel in the coming weeks. In the meantime, if you missed the beginning of this episode, it will be available on our Facebook page, Zoom Into Books Facebook page. You can watch it anytime. And Bill, thank you for your service again. Thank you for writing this amazing book and sharing your story with us. And I hope you'll come back again soon.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye.